and welcome to my show called Get Real with Revenue Marketing. So this show is really about two things. It is about getting real and taking a look at the good and the bad and the ugly of how things really work in the world of marketing. But it's also about taking a pause, just taking a rest from our crazy weeks, just to learn something new and to meet some really interesting people and, quite frankly, pioneers in our industry. So today, I'm very, very happy to have with us Chris Willis, who is Global Marketing Operations Manager at Trimble Construction. And we are going to talk about the evolution and the future of marketing ops. And we have a really fun area that we're going to explore today, and that's where marketing operations sits in an organization. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dr. Debbie.
And I was thinking back, Chris, when did you and I first meet?
I want to say we first met in 2015. I don't know how we came in contact with each other, but you had interviewed me in 2015, and like we talked about a lot of the same
marketing
issues.
Operations, right?
Oh, absolutely, and it was a very new role at the time.
I think you were. I was on the hunt in 2015 to find out more about this thing called marketing operations. And again, I don't remember how you and I met, but you were one of the very first people I interviewed about marketing operations. And here we are, 6 years later, and we're going to talk about some of the same aspects. But why don't you begin by telling our listeners a little bit about what you do in your current role? And also tell us kind of like how your career has progressed, because I think people are always very interested to hear how a career in marketing operations progresses over time.
No, that's great. And it's interesting because all of us that are in marketing operations tend to have like a story of how we landed into marketing operations, because like I think until now, like nobody's really had a distinct career path for people in marketing operations. It's kind of something we fell into because of certain talents we have, certain systems that we knew. And especially in the last year, there's been a lot more focus on career development. There's a lot more talk about career development, which has been really good. So my current role, so I serve as the global operations manager for Trimble Construction. So I was previously in a group and hired into a group called Integrated Marketing Strategies, or IMS, which we served somewhat as a kind of a center of excellence. We were kind of the small and mighty team that was able to accomplish a lot of kind of great transformational things at our company with a fairly small staff. Our success manager at Marketo always talks about him being amazed at how we're able to do more with less. So in my role, I kind of oversee two Marketo orgs that are run by different parts of our construction business. Mostly on a consultative basis. I'm like somewhat of an in-house consultant, somewhat of a best practice guardian, if you will. And then also I'm a consultant to several other divisions. So I have kind of a dual consulting consultative role and kind of operations, kind of system management, process management role. And I oversee a lot of our lead lifecycle processes within our different divisions.
We could talk forever about the kind of stuff that you do, because I find it completely fascinating. And what I like about what I'm hearing is that to me, when you think about marketing operations and the big impact that it can actually make on business, this being this in-house consultant and being a best practices like Sherpa, and then focusing on the lead life cycle. I mean, those are all things that I think the most mature and sophisticated marketing operations teams do. So I'm really, really happy to hear, Chris, that you're doing all of those things. We'll have to talk some more about that offline. But let's talk about your career progression. right?
Sure.
So, I mean, and you're right. So many folks in marketing operations today just kind of fall into marketing operations. They just got there by circumstance. And certainly it's more intentional now. But what kinds of things have you done in your past that has prepared you to be a leader in marketing ops today?
No, thanks. And I've worn a lot of hats over my career, and so I can kind of go back a couple of roles before I even like really got into kind of marketing automation before. After business school, I worked as a kind of a business value consultant, or kind of
Oh,
a ROI modeler for NCR and Teradata, and got
oh,
involved. Yeah, so I got involved with like doing business case justification for
wow.
like our different solutions, and really fell in love initially with like CRM technologies through kind of the work I did with a lot of our industry market, like our industry sales groups at Teradata. We did several kind of projects. I was involved with like Williams Sonoma doing, looking at like, what's the ROI of kind of moving a lot of things online that were previously in catalog. And a couple other, a couple other retailers that really looking to take advantage of more kind of like more business intelligence. And then I transitioned from that.
And let me
Sure.
just say, I can't imagine having a better part of your background than to be working in business intelligence and
Mm-hmm.
data, and not just data for data, but data for business impact and for
Oh,
making
absolutely.
business decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
That must have been just a really foundational part of what you are today and how you run marketing operations today in the role that you serve.
Oh, absolutely. It's something that like really influences every decision that I make as far as like how we structure campaigns, what the why is behind like our marketing kind of operations effort. Um, it is really foundational, and I really feel like that finance background really has kind of added a lot to like what I bring to the table today. So I've
And,
also been yeah, go ahead. I know
no, I
you're
was
going
just
to
going to say,
cut some of this.
and from there, where did you go?
Um, so I then went into kind of a sales operations, kind of marketing analyst type of roles. So I really wanted to get more involved with CRM. I was with a startup that got bought by Vertafore, and
Mhm.
um, got involved with their sales operations group primarily by doing kind of sales and marketing alignment work around how they were using kind of Salesforce first, and setting up Salesforce for the initial kind of the company that got bought, and then eventually joining the sales operations group to kind of lead this, help lead this business transformation, um, to from like a kind of a house of brands to like one company.
You're just hitting all the buttons that I see in the best marketing ops leaders. You've got that business intelligence, you've got data to make a business impact, and then you worked in sales ops, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
really come in and understand the sales side of the equation, not
Mm-hmm.
just from a technology side, but from really what happens day in and day out in sales, and that is still a blind spot for so many marketing organizations. And so from sales ops, did you then go into more of a marketing ops role, or how did that happen?
Now, that's a good question. I actually want to stay a little bit with the sales ops side,
Sure.
because what's interesting is like what we're going to talk about where marketing ops sits in the organization
Mm-hmm.
is somewhat colored by like my experience in sales ops. Like sales operations back in like 2009, 2010 was a fairly new role at the time
Yep.
itself.
Yep.
Essentially, people got into sales ops because they were, one, business practitioners that new Salesforce. They need, organizations needed better visibility into the pipeline. They wanted to standardize their, how they paid their Salesforce. They wanted to get better forecast accuracy. And of course, a lot of that includes like systems, process, people and process and technology. So, and it was interesting because we were originally slated under the finance organization, which allowed us to have like somewhat of a business partner relationship, but not that direct kind of relationship with revenue. We also had several sales leaders, so we didn't really have like one sales organization at the time. And as part of like how the company was transforming from like a house of brands to like kind of a single organization kind of operating as one. But one thing I saw that was a real impact was our group about a year and a half into that role was reorganized under like one chief revenue officer, who I really respected, a man by the name of Mark Saunders, who really saw a vision for like what essentially revenue operations. It really didn't have a name at the time, but like he had marketing operations and sales operations underneath him.
And what company were you with then?
I was with Vertafore.
You were with Vertafore then. Okay. And did Mark go to did he go to McKesson?
He did not.
Okay.
No, he did not.
Okay.
No, he's had a really good career. I think he's tried to recruit me at least one time. So
that's wonderful. And so when you reorganized under a CRO, Mark, what happened? What was the difference?
So number one is like sales operations had a much bigger seat at the table. My boss like noticed a lot more like that a lot of our ideas were getting a lot more attention, and like we were no longer in a sense like kind of doing work for the sales team. We were kind of instead partnering with the sales team, and the business impact was really huge because we were able to improve things like our forecast accuracy, the efficiency of our sales force, and such. It was a really good time to be in that role.
So did marketing also report into the CRO, or did that go into a different? They did. All right. So the CRO had sales and marketing both.
Yes.
Did the CRO have customer success or?
I don't believe they did. It's
okay.
That's okay. I'm reaching back in my memory quite a bit.
But this is such a good story, right? And it's really important because where any organization sits, and we're going to talk more specifically about marketing ops today, really determines how successful they will be. And so that was your first time when you were working with sales ops, and then you got consolidated under a CRO, and it really helps you get that seat at the table because you had a leader who was focused on, those metrics that matter to revenue, right? And, when the executive has metrics that matter, so the team will have metrics that matter as well. Okay. All right. And so let's move forward and talk about, how you've seen where marketing ops sits. And, some people, and I talk about this in my book, From Backroom to Boardroom, Earn Your Seat with Strategic Marketing Operations. I talk about how, from an organizational perspective, we're still very much in the wild, wild west days of what marketing operations is and how it's structured and kind of where it sits. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. And let me kind of wrap up the previous discussion. So like you mentioned, like I had landed in marketing ops at McKesson. I was offered kind of a position to really own kind of marketing, Marketo and Salesforce. And I think ever since the days that I was in Teradata, like I I really wanted to be on the marketing side of kind of CRM. And I saw this as a
Why?
huge, I don't know.
Okay.
I think in like strategic terms. I think I wanted to be more of a demand generation manager at the time.
Okay. Okay.
And this is going to date me a little bit, but in business school, like one of my favorite classes was this marketing strategy class where we were using this simulation program called MarkStrat to essentially run a business. And I was kind of geeked out by that. And so the whole idea of marketing automation kind of brought me back to those days. And it attracted me to like, essentially demand gen marketing operations and such. But that's like essentially at McKesson's where I cut my teeth in kind of marketing operations. And then I, worked for a couple other other organizations. Essentially,
Hey,
sure.
Chris, did you work with Mitch?
I did. Mitch
Okay.
Diamond. So the two people that taught me Marketo, one was Mitch Diamond, who was at Relay Health when I was at McKesson.
Okay.
Mitch is awesome. I can't say enough good things about Mitch.
He's actually in the book. He's one of the people that I interviewed for the book.
Absolutely. I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
He's one of the pioneers.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. And then when I moved to my next role, and I was actually like at that point standing up my own organization. I did a consultant with Marketo named Nicole Mossinger, who really taught me a lot of kind of the best practices that go with Marketo. A lot of the operational best practices that I deploy even today, kind of a result of kind of Nicole's work. In fact, I gave her a shout out on LinkedIn, and I'm pretty sure she was blushing because like some of her comments were really, really amazing. But she's done so much to help help a lot of people that were like me, that were formative in the industry, really get us on track.
It is so great to have those mentors, along the way that you were able to work with incredible people. It really makes a difference to a career. And you've already listed like 3 already, so you've been very fortunate.
Yeah. And yeah, it's the people that get us, like essentially get us, whether we're like technical or we have aspirations to kind of move up in organizations. Mm-hmm. It's always people that are going to like help us get to the next step.
I agree.
So, and it was at that org that I kind of stood up my first org. And then I've, like I mentioned, I've been in some other places where I've owned orgs. I spent a little bit of time in agency consulting, which just wasn't me.
Right. I don't see you doing that. Yeah. Yeah.
I think every Marketo practitioner has kind of an ambition, whether it's because like that's how we kind of prove our chops, or it's the sexy role. We have that ambition. It didn't work for me. I did a little bit of freelancing, and then I landed at Trimble about a little over 3 years ago, where I'm in my current role today. And like being a kind of a hybrid consultant, like within an organization, and kind of being that process owner is really kind of like brought a lot of the, like gelled a lot of the like experience that I've had. It's been a really great role. And I also have an amazing like boss and mentor, Trisha Saunders, who's really helped me grow as a leader in our organization.
So where is marketing operations in your organization today? Where does it sit?
So today within Trimble Construction, it sits under marketing.
Okay.
And it sits under strategic marketing. And we're kind of in, like I probably mentioned, we're probably in like some of the same kind of situation that I was over, like when I was over at Vertafore pre-organization. Like Trimble's grown a lot by acquisition. We've got a lot of business units that are doing great work, and they're their own way of kind of structuring marketing operations. Like, we brought in a new CEO, Rob Painter, in about a year and a half ago, who's really looking at like really connecting our organization right now, and the results have been really good. So we're in that, that transformational phase, which is really exciting. Having been there, having been in that change management role at Vertafore, it's been really cool to see, kind of look at it again and look at how kind of systematically and thoughtfully our leadership is.
So let me ask you this. So you have a sales ops role in the company as well, right? And I'm assuming that goes up into sales. Is that right?
It actually doesn't. So our sales ops, in our organization, our sales ops role actually reports to our digital transformation office, which has really been helpful for consolidating the systems.
I bet it has. Oh my gosh, I love that, because again, that's one of the big things is somewhere along the line, what I'm seeing is a consolidation of systems. Everyone's trying to get that one view of the customer, no matter where they are, right? Even if you have multiple product lines, multiple business units, people still want that one view of the customer. And unless you have somebody like a digital transformation officer, and unless you have some clout somewhere that's pretty much making people, integrate, it's really, really hard to bust down those silos. You got to have some power behind that, right?
And change takes time. I mean, you don't want to disrupt an organization. You don't want to disrupt an entire organization to make these changes. So you have to think about them very carefully, very systematically, and you have to understand what the what the end goal is.
So I've seen, and a lot of times, again, I mentioned it's still the Wild Wild West days of how marketing ops is structured, and also where it sits. So, a lot of times I'm seeing probably in smaller companies who are a little bit more agile, where marketing ops and sales ops are together as one organization, kind of like what you had at Vertafore, right? And then that reporting into the CRO. But and occasionally, every once in a while, I see a combined marketing and sales ops reporting into marketing, but I think that's rare. But the other thing that I'm seeing, Chris, is that's combined team reporting to operations, reporting into the office of the COO. And several people that I've talked to who have a combined operation actually like reporting into the COO because they say it keeps them honest, right? So I'm not beholden to sales. I'm not beholden to marketing. I'm beholden to reporting it just exactly like it is, right?
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of us that are in this role, when we see that potential, that's really attractive to us, because a lot of us that are in and I call it the revenue operations role.
Love it. Yes. That's exactly what it is. Yes.
Because essentially revenue operations is really kind of the operation of the people, process, and technology around every stage of the revenue process. So you've got marketing, sales, and customer support.
Yep.
And each group has their own, operations. A lot of them in a lot of organizations today, and including ours, sit in those siloed organizations. And there's a lot of power in bringing them together.
There is. It's like the stories, when I talk to people who have those combined organizations, I always get chills around what they're able to accomplish, especially as we are more and more in a customer-driven world. And our go-to-market strategies really have to be incredibly focused on the customer, and we have to be incredibly responsive to the customer, right?
Yep.
By bringing those organizations together. I mean, every person I've ever talked to who works in a RevOps organization They did bring it together because of revenue, but just about every time the driving factor is to get that one line of sight to the customer, and is to better serve the customer. So I think that RevOps is something that we're going to be hearing a lot more about. It's kind of like marketing ops 15 years ago, right? And I think RevOps is really where a lot of transformation is going to happen.
Oh, absolutely. And so from my vantage point, kind of back to like where marketing operations sits. So I think about like, there's essentially three places that I'm seeing that marketing operations goes to sit. So one is that kind of combined revenue operations group. So like you've got like you've obviously got the objectivity that lives there. You've got, the combination of being like united with your sales ops counterparts, your customer support ops counterparts. So one, obviously one downside of that you have to work in coalition build around is like when you're not in marketing, or you're not in kind of that revenue function, you do have to work to coalition build to make sure that you're aligned with like what's going on in the marketing teams, what's going on in the marketing strategy.
You have to build back. Exactly.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
So we live today in marketing within my group. So yeah, obviously the positives of that is that we're integral with everything that's happening from the marketing strategy, from the marketing execution standpoint. And that's one thing I missed being in the agency world, is that in the agency world, you were kind of doing a lot of projects for people, but you weren't really integral with their marketing strategy, and you weren't supposed to be. I mean, that wasn't your role. So the downside of that is that you can lose the objectivity when you're in the marketing organization. And
do you also find it harder to collaborate with sales by just being in the marketing ops organization, by being in marketing?
Sometimes. I've worked very hard to coalition build on the sales side, and having been in a pre-sales role at Teradata and having been in a sales ops role,
it makes a big difference.
It helps me talk the language, which is good.
It does.
And then the third place I've seen it, and I think Marketo used to have their organization kind of structured under this group, and I know some other folks that are kind of Marketo champions or former Marketo champions, is where they're like structured under IT.
I don't like that ever.
Yeah, I have
ever. I've never seen it work ever.
Yep.
I've seen it blow up, but I've not ever really. It doesn't really work.
Yeah, I think the only places where it works, and I've heard Josh Hill talk about this, who's at Ringlead, is that you spend a lot of time coalition building. Like you have to be super intentional about making sure that you're ingrained with the marketing strategy, because I agree with you. Like if that doesn't happen and you don't have leaders that have a marketing mind, then you end up being the ticket takers and the order takers and the burger flippers and all the things that we hate.
Yep. That's exactly right. So, and it was so funny, even before you started, because I always take notes while I write. I don't know why. I just do. It just helps me do a better interview, and it helps me think. I actually put down a little grid where this is the thing, and this is going to be the pros, and this is the cons. And then you went straight into it. It was perfect, Chris. It was perfect. And so, the thing I want to let everybody know is that's listening or watching, there's no right or wrong answer, right? It's what works for the company that you're in at this time, right?
Absolutely.
And depending on just so many things that are going on within the culture and within the business, it could be in any of these places and be highly successful. It really doesn't matter. Okay. So I have two final questions for you. One is, what is the future of marketing operations?
I think we touched a little bit on that. So I do see, and especially kind of the pandemic situation in 2020 has really kind of accelerated a lot of this, where I think marketing operations started in organizations because we bought this tool, whether it's Marketo, Eloqua, whatnot. And we know we need expert people to kind of manage like the revenue process, like how we orchestrate campaigns, reporting. And these systems are complex. There's
no matter what
there's no
they
way
tell us.
Exactly. The salespeople will
Right.
always tell us it's easy, and
no,
never confuse like sales with implementation. Implementation is always hard.
That's right. That's right.
So like we grew up as a function because organizations needed people who knew these systems and knew how to kind of orchestrate these systems. I think as like organizations are getting more complex, more of the sales cycle is being managed online, which in a lot of industries has been happening for a while. I think traditional industries, like it's taken a little bit of time to catch up because it's high touch. Like the organizations that I've worked in, we've sold $4 million linear accelerator deals, and robotic survey equipment. These are things that are somewhat difficult to sell online. They're very high touch sale. But with the pandemic, like organizations have had to think about like, how do we bring some of that online, which is kind of force the decision of, about like, hey, we need to understand like the revenue process. And so where I see like marketing operations is that we're starting now to get more of a seat at the table. Like we're starting to get, and I think marketing operations groups need to be able to talk finance and need to be able to talk business strategy in order to gain those seats at the table.
Preach, brother, preach. You are so right. They absolutely do.
Yep.
And they can.
Absolutely can.
They have the opportunity to do that now, right? And it was a great opportunity pre-pandemic. It's a better opportunity post-pandemic. So the opportunity is right there for that marketing operations team and marketing operation leaders to take that.
And I also see as organizations really look at their total revenue cycle, that we are going to see more of these revenue operations teams where we bring all of the operations teams together so that we're collaborating, so that we're really not really thinking in silos. Marketing operations, I just care about getting leads to the sales force and handing them off, and then sales operations takes over, but we're not interacting on a day-to-day basis. Where in a revenue operations world, we are thinking about that total picture. And we have owners of each of these processes that are enabling us to hum as a revenue machine.
I love that. I completely agree. I think that's absolutely where it's going.
Yeah. And I did like the way that we had it structured at Vertafore, where that revenue operations team reported to revenue and was accountable to a chief revenue officer. I think in my ideal world, if I was made king for a day, that's how I would structure it, because you have the marketing strategy, the revenue strategy, and the revenue operations really at all at the table together.
Yeah. Sometimes I scare CMOs when I talk to them, and I say, maybe marketing ops and sales ops should be together, because really it becomes revenue ops at that point. And they say, who does it report to? And I'm like, well, it's kind of the CRO, and and I was just talking to a friend of mine who's just taken a new job with a new company. And I said, however, if I were new in this role, I wouldn't want to give it up, right? I wouldn't. Yep. But from a business perspective, it absolutely makes sense, right? So anyway,
absolutely.
So I love these ideas, and I love your vision, and I totally agree. And I do talk about a lot of this in my book, and I'll be sending you a copy. I'm getting them today. I got some pre-advanced copies today, Chris, and I'll be sending out a copy, of course. Okay. All right. Last question. What inspires you?
Oh man, I think so. what inspires me is like really seeing people work together to accomplish things together that they couldn't accomplish on their own. Um, and to like, I think I mentioned like in some of my like LinkedIn posts, like I'm a teacher at heart, like, and like, um, I've followed some really awesome leadership, experts, people like Andy Stanley and John Maxwell, et cetera. And um, their message is really, not one leader kind of taking things and running with it, but like a leader that's inspiring other people, that is creating leaders that we're all kind of moving along the same path. And one thing that's, really inspired, and that end inspired me is kind of watching kind of the small and mighty team that I'm part of accomplish things. And like we get recognition from like Marketo a lot of times for accomplishing things that 20-person teams like struggle with, like accomplishing with a very small group of people that are like, that we collaborate very well. We have a huge level of trust amongst each other. And we're all moving in the same direction.
I love that. I love that. And that you just defined what I think a great leader is, Chris. It's not the person that does everything themselves, but inspires and motivates people where 1 and 1 becomes 3, right? Mm-hmm. It's not 1 and 1 is 2. So that is a great story. And that is something that I think everybody would love to be a part of if they haven't been. So, Well, Chris, thank you. You have shared so much with us today. And I love how your career journey has really helped you be where you are right now. And you're beyond a purple unicorn, right? We always talk about requiring purple unicorns, but you just have so many of those skills that I think are required to be a leader in marketing operations. So thank you for sharing with us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And so everybody, that's our show. Thanks again, Chris. Thanks to all of our watchers and to our listeners. And remember, everybody, it's a great day to be a revenue marketer, and we'll see you next time. See you later.